Hi guys, today we're going to be talking about the idea of deserve. It's another one of those words that gets thrown around a lot. A lot of the time we use it saying something like, I deserve to be happy because I'm a good person, I should get the job because I deserve it, I don't deserve this shouldn't be happening to me. And we rationalize and justify in our minds that we should be getting these things, and then when we don't get them, it can be really frustrating and confusing. And that's kind of an understatement some of the time. It can really be debilitating and just consume us why these things aren't happening for us in our lives. I'm going to start with saying that it's a word that we really don't need to be using, and it's because at the end of the day, the truth is that we all deserve to be happy. All of us deserve goodness, all of us deserve love, all of us deserve these things. So when we say something like, I deserve this, it's implying that we think that other people don't deserve it while we do. And that's just an ignorant statement. Now, of course, there are bad people, there are mean people, there are really fucked up people in this world, and to say that they deserve this goodness and not, it's honestly not really for us to be saying. It doesn't benefit you in any way to be judging people and saying what they deserve and what they don't deserve. This comes down to the understanding that there is a higher mind, a higher power in the universe, that the universe is governed by law and that it must remain balanced. So when you understand these principles, then you can see that unjust things will be rectified, and people who are doing bad in the world, those things resolve themselves on their own. Those aren't for us to be judging and saying, well, good people deserve good things and bad people deserve bad things. The truth at the end of the day is that we all have a little bit of both inside of us, but we're all worthy of love and goodness in our lives at the end of the day. So let's look at some examples of how we use this word a lot, and we can start to see how it doesn't really serve us. Just looking at your own life or observing others, we see these situations a lot where, say you're an amazing lover or just a really ideal partner, someone who just would be really good to someone, and then you see someone that you are really interested in, and instead of going with you, they choose someone else, and that person just completely falls short in every way where you excel. You could literally spend the rest of your life alone while you're what a lot of people are looking for in a partner. You could be an innocent person and you could spend the rest of your life in prison for a crime that you didn't commit. Even worse, you could literally be guilty of a good crime, a crime that benefited people, but because of a corrupt justice system, you'll suffer for the rest of your life in prison. You could be the most skilled person at the skill that you do and still not get the job that you're applying for. You can find yourself in a job where you're an employee under a supervisor who is a complete idiot, and they tell you how to do your job and they get paid more than you, and you have to do what they tell you to do. You could literally know more than the people that are telling you how to do your job. You can do everything right. You can diet, you can exercise, you can take care of yourself, you can live a good life and do good in the world, and you can find yourself with an illness and die. Or you could find yourself in an accident and you could find your health and your opportunities and your potential taken away from you. And the opposite is true too. You could be a complete dirtbag of a person and you could run a Fortune 500 company. You could be in charge of thousands of people's lives and income and just be a miserable human being. You could have all the riches in the world. You can be a billionaire. You can have fame and fortune and all the glory and title and position and not give to the world much of anything. You could be a pretty worthless person and still achieve a very high position. You could be a very little intellect and find yourself in a position where you're teaching other people. You can be an unhealthy, slob, disgusting excuse for a human being and find yourself with an amazing, beautiful person. You could lie, you can cheat, you can steal, and you could find yourself in a lofty position where you have health and wealth and riches, while someone else who's good and honest and doing right in the world will find themselves without any of these things. And I know a lot of us can relate to this. We've all had experiences like this, and it probably even stings right now if you think back to them. Some of us may even be going through something like this right now. And we all know how difficult these situations can be. But I want to make the distinction that this has nothing to do with deserve. You can find yourself with an amazing person, and it doesn't mean that you deserve them. You could find yourself with the best job in the world and it doesn't mean that you earned it. Just because you find yourself in a really shitty situation in your life and you're an amazing person doesn't mean that you don't deserve better. And it doesn't fix these situations, it doesn't really help make them better, but if we can look at these situations and know that there is something to learn from them, it can help, and also understand that nothing is permanent, that everything is always changing, so whatever situation you're in, you're not going to be there forever. But what can we do? If we're in these situations and they feel so lost and hopeless, so unfair and unjust, and just they can seem completely out of our control, well, first it's good to understand that these situations are opportunities and we can always grow from them. If you find yourself in a difficult situation, maybe it will test your strength or your perseverance or your resilience in life. Sometimes it'll test you and show how bitter or callous or victimized you can see yourself. If you're on what seems to be the lucky side of things, then eventually someday you may realize how hubris you were, how overconfident, how foolish you are to think that you're much more superior than you actually are. And no matter where you are, remember these situations play out in time. But one really useful way I want to talk about handling these situations is the idea of zooming out. A lot of the times we're really close to these problems and we kind of have our blinders on, or we're just too focused and it's harder for us to see the bigger picture. So by zooming out and getting a different perspective, we can start to see these predicaments a different way. To speak from personal experience, sometimes when I wake up in the morning, or sometimes during meditation, or if I'm just lucky enough to be in this state of mind, I can have this state where I become hyper aware. Everything is just that much more clear, everything is more vivid, and I see the much bigger picture of things. And if you're unfamiliar, everyone should know that the brain operates on different wavelengths. The ones that we're focusing on here are alpha and theta. Not to get too caught up in the technical side of things, but understand that we move through these different wavelengths in how our brain is operating. And if we start to practice, then we can get ourselves into these states and start to see things a different way. And I'm mentioning this because when you have a much broader view of things, all of a sudden the things that you were so focused on and that might seem so difficult at the time, they kind of dissolve into this much bigger picture. And I want to look at this example because it really helps in these situations. I use it all the time. It's the idea of climbing this big mountain. It can be a metaphorical mountain or a real mountain or whatever it is. Just the idea is that it's a very intimidating obstacle. And so I want you to imagine being right up to the foot of this mountain and seeing its size right in front of you. It's this huge sheer mountain and it just looks impossible for you to climb it. But now let's assume that you can fly. Okay, so now you're stepping up and away from the mountain and you're flying further and further, and the mountain starts to get smaller and smaller, and before you know it, the mountain is imperceptibly small. And we can go further still. We can keep going until the earth is small, until the sun is small, until all we see are a bunch of stars, and so on and so forth. We can just keep on going and going. The point is that this mountain that once seemed to be this huge, giant, unscalable thing is now all of a sudden nothing. It doesn't even exist in your perception, and that's how small it became. Now, of course, this is a really simple idea, but the concept is there still, that if you look at these problems that seem so big and you zoom out so you can get this bigger picture, then they become smaller. And our lives are complex and our problems are multi-layered and extend to these things and those things. But if we apply this idea and just zoom out, we can see how these problems that seem so big start to become smaller. It can be many problems or it can be a single problem. And eventually, hopefully you'll see that no matter how big your problem is, so what? Okay, so what? Big deal. So what? You spent your life going to school and working hard for this thing just so you could find yourself mopping floors. Whatever the unfair situation that you find yourself in, where you deserve more, so what? The truth is, you have life, you have air right here for you, you probably have food and water, you probably have a home, you probably have people and things and friends and family in your life. When we look at this one thing that's wrong, we can lose scope of all the things that we really do have to be grateful for. And it doesn't take away from the void that we're missing, right? Just because you have this thing, it still doesn't handle the fact that you don't have this thing. But as we remove ourselves from these problems and step away and look at the bigger picture, another thing that becomes clear is that there really isn't any loss, okay? There's no deficiency, there's no lack in the universe. The truth of it is that all things really are, and just because you don't have the job right now, or you didn't get this thing that you deserve, or whatever it is that you feel that you need or want in life isn't here right now, it doesn't mean that it won't be here in the future or at another time, or that you haven't had it before. In any case, it's important to remember that this is infinity, and whatever it is that you're so focused on is actually really insignificant and small. The universe is vast and infinite, okay? Our possibilities are limitless. You are vast and infinite. In my video talking about reality, we talk about how anything that you experience is real. Your thoughts and your dreams, many of the things that we pass off as anecdotal or arbitrary, or just simply we don't think that it's real. There's a good Rick and Morty episode where they go to this arcade and they play this video game, and the idea is that you go into this person's life and now you're living this video game character's life, and you're kind of oblivious to it, and you can do whatever you want in there. You can have a family, you can have kids, you can kill people, you can play the game however you want, and by the end of the game you come out of it and your mind's kind of blown because you had all these experiences and then you realize it was just a game. In physics, this is described as infinite parallel realities, and it says that in one universe you got the girl, in the other universe you got the job, in the other you didn't. In one universe you had justice, while in the other one you had injustice. And of course, in your universe, in your situation, this idea doesn't seem to serve you until you see that the universe is this infinite sea of possibilities. Believe it or not, you've experienced what it's like to have these things, to have the job, to have justice, to have the girl, to get these things that you so desire right now. And guess what? When you had them, meh, so what? So what that you got this thing or that thing? Many of the times when we think of these things that we really want, when we finally get them, it's usually not as fulfilling. And the opposite is true too. How many times have you dreaded going to work the day before, or hours before, or even days before you're going to go into work, and you have all this anxiety and anticipation building up to, this dreadful day at work, and then the day comes and you finally go and meh, it wasn't that bad. You made it up to be something that it wasn't. And you may not see it, but you have things that others want too. Just because your boss is getting paid more and he's an idiot, maybe he really desires to have your intellect or your integrity or your family or your friends or your situation or your position. Just because they have this title doesn't mean that they have this. All of us are going through this and experiencing what it's like to have certain things and not have other things. I want to talk about this cool Hindu story, and I think it's about the god Vishnu, and he, for whatever reason, incarnates as a pig. And the idea is that he's this, infinite cosmic being, and he chooses to go down and live this pig's life. And he's oblivious to his life before, and all he knows is this life as a pig. And he lives on this farm, and, he eats muck, and he ends up having a wife pig, and he has baby pigs, and he's living this happy little ignorant pig life. And he couldn't be more obliviously happy until finally his wife is killed for slaughter, and then his kids, and then he's left alone, and he's just a miserable, completely depressed and loathsome, sad little pig. Just his whole life is ruined and destroyed, and he's just crying all the time and just sad, until finally, by the grace of God, one day he dies, and he goes back to heaven, and he's Vishnu again, and he just can't stop laughing. He can't get over it, how silly he was to get so caught up in this drama of this little pig when he's this infinitely powerful being, and here he was so focused and so caught up on these really tiny, simple little problems. And the truth is, honestly, it can be a really beautiful and humbling experience to go through something like that. When you have the universe at your fingertips, and then all of a sudden you know what it's like to go without, it can be a very eye-opening experience. And it really harkens to why we're here and what we're doing here. The truth is, infinity is real and life is infinite. Ideas like birth and death are just transitions from one state to another. Life continues, and it keeps on continuing. And when you start to see how big infinity is, it puts these big problems of ours into perspective, and we can see how silly ideas like deserve and worth really are. And when you really start to get it and see that anything is possible, that nothing is really lost to you, and however difficult or impossible things may seem in your life right now, maybe you can start to see the beauty in it as well. In the movie Troy, Achilles has this really cool part where he says that the gods envy us because we're mortal, every moment is precious. And it really is true. If you're really aware of everything and infinity, and you have this infinite potential like a god, then you can lose scope of these simpler, seemingly insignificant things that are so important and valuable to us in these lives. To Vishnu, all these things mean nothing, but that means that you are in an enviable situation because you see great value in these simplest of things. So by zooming out, we really can start to see how these ideas of deserve and worth really don't mean much of anything. The truth is, you are totally deserving and worthy of whatever it is that you desire. And just because you haven't had it, or you don't have it right now, doesn't mean that it won't become available to you at some point in your life. Life isn't telling you that you can't have this thing, or that you're not working hard enough for it, or that something is fundamentally wrong with you, and so you don't get to have it while someone else does. But if you're paying attention, maybe you can see that life is showing you the value of these things, and that all these quirks to life really are precious. And when we learn these truths and begin to apply them and walk with them in our lives, we begin to live in harmony. And when we don't learn them, then life continues to present them to us, and it can present them to us in the same way over and over, or in many different ways, until we do start to get them. And if we're honest with ourselves, we can see how our own mistakes and missteps and sins and misdeeds have messed us up and will continue to mess us up. Yeah, I was an amazing athlete and a fit and healthy person, and I was doing a lot of things the right way, practicing and working hard and never giving up, and I had a lot going for me. But I was also maybe ignorant or overly confident or foolhardy, and I couldn't see these things until life showed me by giving me this accident. Life showed me and humbled me and took me out of this position so that I could see that there's more to life than just being healthy and fit and throwing balls. My accident showed me how my priorities were misaligned, and it took me out of the position that I was in before so that I could see things from this new perspective. Or yeah, this person I really liked and cared for never really saw the value in me, just looked right through me and went on to find someone else that never gave them the things that I would have given them. And it kills me because I feel like they're missing out and I'm missing out. But the truth is that they are also living their lives and going through their own traumas, and no matter how peachy it might seem for them, they're also in a hell of their own making, and they also have their lessons to learn. And if they do learn, they'll see the value that they denied themselves in you, and they'll understand how much they really missed out. And it's not about rubbing people's noses in things, it's not about proving that I'm right and you're wrong, it's about gaining insight and learning through humility and getting these new perspectives. We have these really short and simple lives, and a lot of us have this notion that this is it, and that ignorance is what keeps us stuck in these mindsets, and it really holds us down. The universe is vast and infinite, and opportunities come at us all the time. Sometimes they can seem favorable, and sometimes they can seem like a curse, but it's always an opportunity to learn and grow and move forward. And realize it's not over. Life is still going. It's going to continue going and continue going. And just because you don't have these things that you think you deserve right now doesn't mean that you're not going to get them at some point. And just because you have these things right now doesn't mean that they're not going to be taken away from you at any point. And don't fall into the trap of thinking that things are constantly going to be this way for you. You may have a job right now, but you could be fired tomorrow. Yeah, just because you found this amazing person doesn't mean that they're not going to finally get sick of your shit and leave you. Or that if you put yourself out there, you might actually find the person of your dreams tomorrow. And just because you have this amazing body and this health and wealth and privilege, it doesn't mean you're one single step above a sad, lonely, stinking, pathetic bum down the street in the next alley. You're no better or more deserving or worthy than they are, and your fates could be swapped on a whim. Life is so much wiser than we give it credit for, and in an instant, it could take away everything that it's given you. Your body, your health, your life, none of it is guaranteed. The universe doesn't owe you anything, so be humble and grateful and thankful for what you do have. And see the truth that whatever you are missing in your life doesn't define your entire existence. It doesn't mean that just because you don't have it now, that you're not going to have it at some point in your life. You really will have everything presented to you in time. So that's it for this video talking about the idea of deserve. I hope you guys liked it. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to these situations. If you did like it, please feel free to subscribe. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.